Okay, everybody. So it's now 7:03. I've got most people in the waiting room. I think I've had a little slowdown there. Seems like most people have now joined the meeting. But if anybody joins late, I'll admit them as well. And if you, for those here, if you happen to have others in your circles who were hoping to join, you can feel free to share the same access code that you used to get into this meeting. So it's now 7:03. I'm going to kick things off. Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us tonight for this public information session about the proposed bioprocessing facility for the creation of liquid fish fertilizer on Bauline Line Extension. And my name is Stephanie Tucker. I'm Acting Director of Economic Development, Marketing, and Communications for the Town of Portugal Cove-St. And I'm excited to be here with you tonight, and I'm going to provide an overview and offer some housekeeping items before we get started. I'll just be about 3 minutes and then we will kick off the meeting. So the first thing, I just want everyone to be aware that the session is being recorded. So you can feel free to turn off your cameras or you can leave them on, whatever you're most comfortable with. And I have muted everybody for now. Tonight's meeting will run until approximately 8:30 p.m. We'll try to stick within that time frame if possible. And we're going to start the session shortly with a presentation from the proposed project's proponents. That's Miss Anita Walsh, who is the director of Windy Heights Farm. We have got Miss Diane Hollett, who is the co-founder of NL Marine Organics. And they're joined tonight by Dr. Raymond Thomas, who is the principal investigator of the Marine Biomass Initiative, Grenfell Campus Memorial University. And some important notes here. The virtual session tonight is strictly an opportunity for information gathering. So, sorry, I've just got a couple more joining in the waiting room, pardon me. So the virtual session tonight, as I said, it's strictly an opportunity for information gathering. The session is solely a chance for those proposing the project to share details and answer questions posed directly to them. For the purpose of this evening's session, town staff and council are here to observe and learn, and we will listen to the answers given from the proponents. Council and staff will not be answering questions tonight. We are aware that there are questions as to what is currently taking place at the facility and whether or not it is contrary to the town plan and regulations. And while these questions require answer and action, which will take place, the purpose of this meeting is to gain information about the proposed operation so that the actual processes to be undertaken are understood. So tonight's session will also provide information on which council can base its decision to move forward with the amendment process or to deny the proposal. We won't be spending a lot of time tonight discussing, how we got to where we are now, because that would eat up a lot of our time, and we want to try to keep this meeting going. And in all likelihood, if we discuss too much of that, it's going to take away from the time necessary to understand the proposal, which is the goal of this evening's meeting. And after this, council will be better informed as to how to move forward. So this proposed operation, at this time, it's not permitted within the existing zoning regulations, but if the project is considered for next steps, an amendment to the existing regulations would be required. So I think that's important information for everybody to know. If we reach the point that we are going to go through the amendment process, that the amendment process would include public notices, a series of further public consultations, further opportunities for feedback before the application would be considered for a permit. So please keep that information in mind as we take tonight as an opportunity to learn more about the proposed project. I'm just admitting some more folks. And I'm almost through. You won't have to hear me talk too much longer here. We're going to turn it over to our proponents soon. But following their presentations, we are going to have a Q&A session. During the question and answer session, audience members will be given the opportunity to use the raise hand function. So down along the bottom bar, if you're on the computer, you should see that in your Zoom. And if you want to pose a question during the Q&A period, I ask that you just use that function, raise your hand, and then one at a time in order of the questions, I will unmute the question asker, that person, and allow them time to ask their question. Each person who is asking a question will be given up to 2 minutes. You can try to keep it shorter if possible to ask their question. And then our project proponents will be given the same amount of time, up to 2 minutes, to answer. And I'll let everybody know if anybody is approaching or about to go over that time, we will have to cut you off in the interest of time to keep this meeting moving along. So before I hand it over to our proponents, the last point I just want to mention here is about respect. So before tonight's presentation begins, this is your final reminder to be respectful during tonight's session. Tonight is an opportunity for learning, for information gathering, and for respectful dialogue. So I ask everyone to please be courteous throughout the session and take the opportunity to listen. Thank you all for joining. We'll now begin the presentation, and I'll return at the end of the presentation to begin the Q&A portion. So I am now going to ask the project proponents, who's going to begin? Is it Ms. Diane Hollett is going to kick it off here?
Yep.
Great. So I'm going to mute myself. Diane, I now hand it over to you, and folks will be back, and everyone will be given the chance to ask their questions soon.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Stephanie, for that introduction. I'm going to now share my screen, and I'm going to bring up a little presentation that we have prepared. Let's see there. Okay, so today's speakers are, I don't know if you can see this here, move that down. So we have assembled a team of our technical team to present the project, run through the frequently asked questions, and then we'll have Dr. Thomas will have present some information about some new technology that can be brought to bear. And then I think we'll have Anita wrap up with a presentation on technology in farms, and then we'll move into the questions and answers. So I'm going to run through this slide presentation fairly quickly in the interests of getting to the questions, but we do have, I believe this is being recorded and people can refer back to this. So first of all, our mission is really about growing clean food with marine inputs. We understand that in order to launch something new, we have to cluster expertise. We have to bring in a multidisciplinary approach and create the value. We know that in order to create value, we can do that by transforming a traditionally difficult to use marine byproduct, which is available in abundance in our shores. And we can turn that from being a difficult product to use into being a smooth pouring pumpable liquid that works. And finally, we have part of our mission is really to operate the plant peacefully and coexist with public interests around raw material transportation, smell, and environment protection. And this presentation will walk through how we've addressed all of those concerns. First of all, I think it's really important to understand what this is and what it isn't. The old way of dealing with fish offal was really to put it on a field and spread it, raw fish, the same thing that's been done for 8,000 years or more. We're not that. We're a team of people who are interested in solving problems and innovating technology. And so we've created a methodology that uses a new way for farming. And I've got here just a little video so that we're not like flicking fish out there on the fields. This is actually a smooth filtered pour, and it's a modern clean tech approach. It's also non-toxic, and it's safe in the home and in the garden, and it's proven safe for farm use. So just to skip down to the next one. Yeah, so the technology that we've developed, whoops, let me just go back. The technology that we've developed here is actually being used in other jurisdictions. It's been used for over 40 years in other jurisdictions, and those farms have had access, those consumers have had access to a regular supply of marine inputs. Normally Newfoundland, with all this fish, we have in the past thrown out our fish and bought the imports. well, perhaps we could actually take this a little further and actually develop some infrastructure and develop some capacity, even though it's new and it takes some change management to understand that it's new. I think we can do that together. So when we were looking for a location, the Windy Heights farm had been clients of mine in a previous business, and they invited me up here and said, take a look. So we're up here in the highlands of Bauline Line Extension, and we used the product in their fields for 2 years to great success. And so we said, okay, well, let's take a look at that. Maybe we can actually do something here. So we embarked on some site planning and some feasibility planning. We developed a concept, we developed a floor plan, and the engineering drawings to support that. And this sort of floor plan here, this shows tanks. These these are tanks with mixers in them, and they're all arrayed in a line. So when we developed our concept and we did our homework on it, we brought it to the town. That was last fall, and we registered a permit for application. And then we also registered with the environmental registration process. And that process was undertaken from October into January. And during that time, there was a formal 6-week public consultation period. We also had the project reviewed by the experts in 23 different government departments. And these are, when you're looking at something new and new technology, the people who really understand, and that the final layer of view is at the provincial level in the environmental registration. We also had the production process is also regulated, by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, via the organic standard. So we're regulated by the feds in terms of our process. And then the product category is considered a primary farm fertilizer that is recognized as safe for use on Canadian farms. So we did win that. We were successful in doing that. So now we've come to the town to say, let's take a look. So the public interest in this case is protected by federal and provincial agencies. The municipality is not necessarily, they don't have to bear the responsibility of regulating, of making sure this is up to code. All of that heavy lifting is done by the Department of Environment, by Service NL, Occupational Health and Safety, and also on the federal side, CFIA. So they're the regulatory bodies, and they have evaluated our plans and said that they're safe. So having sort of given you that quick introduction into what we are, we are going to just run through the 4 main questions that people have been asking. So the first question, and all of these questions were asked during that 6-week process when the residents and concerned citizens wrote in to the Department of Environment, and their concerns were formally evaluated. So where to go from here? So in terms of environmental controls and watershed and groundwater, our material was considered to be a very acceptable alternative to other products that could be used for fertilization, that being high chemical compounds or manure. So the material is considered non-toxic. There's an MSDS sheet which provides it's really legally binding instruction about how to clean it up. Should there be a spill? What is the risk? What is the personal protective equipment that might need to be used? And all in all, this is a pretty benign material. It might smell bad a bit, but it's a non-toxic. It's not going to hurt your lungs. It's not going to hurt your skin. You don't need to have PPE dressed up in it when you're applying it. It's non-toxic. We also have a very big containment system which mitigates spill risk at site. And we'll go down the next slide and take a look at that. We had questions about the watershed. So this facility is actually located outside of the watershed. And because of the containment and the nature of the process, this was considered not to be a risk by the Department of Environment. And we are compliant with requirements. Now, the containment capacity exceeds our tankage volumes. So I was asked, well, what if something tragic happens and you lose all of your tanks at the same time? Which probably wouldn't really happen unless there should be maybe, I don't know, what could
An earthquake,
a missile
right?
strike? I don't know.
Strike.
There will actually be safety bars, so a truck or a forklift would not be able to hit the tanks. But should there be some kind of a spill, the barn itself has enough space that we can have a coffer. Was it a coffer dam?
Yeah, there's already partial coffer dam inside the barn.
So that will provide a holding capacity for more than our entire tankage holding capacity, which means there would not be a risk of sort of a sudden sort of rush down the hill, as you know, it has been sort of concerned about. So I think that's really important to know. Containment exceeds tankage capacity. And it is all on an impervious surface. When we look at transportation, so we're primarily talking about sourcing fish from the growing salmon industry. And the salmon industry is fairly, very well regulated, and they have best practices established. Sorry,
5 minutes.
oh yeah. So the fish byproduct is pickled at the farm. So it's called ensiling, but it's really, it's lowering the pH, much as you might do with a batch of, if you were going to pickle some mussels or pickle some herring, the vinegar stops the fish from going rotten. Same principle here. And I think even though we're talking about kitchen science, the principle is relative. And so we are, of course, trucking in sealed containers and totes. We would expect to use a tanker system, but we may have to start off with totes in the beginning. That's fine. It's all concealed and it's all compliant. So the scale of the process. Our project fits inside an existing building footprint. We don't need to take up valuable farmland out of production. We're not looking at that. We're inside an existing underused barn. And this is a great chance to do an adaptive reuse, to adapt an old barn into new value, to new life. The site capacity that we've been registered for with Department of Environment would be 5,000 units. And we won't reach that immediately, I wouldn't expect. We actually expect to start off processing a truckload a week and then grow to a truckload a day as the raw material supply grows and the market interest grows. Having said that though, our small little 7 tanks that are along the side of the wall, because they operate on an input and output, a process flow basis, we could actually make enough fertilizer here to cover Newfoundland's fertilization needs. We could do about 40,000 acres. And if we're looking at farmland or vegetable land, you're typically looking at 120 liters per acre over the run of the year. And it depends on your soil, but you can also use much lower amounts. You could use higher, but that's a pretty good average. It means that our food production and our food producers could have a new option that's proven safe. And I will say, in terms of the scale, that a daily delivery of raw material is well within the norms of farming on a 400-acre operation. I had conversations with residents and they said, a whole truckload. Well, yes, trucks, when you're dealing with farms, you use trucks. When you're dealing with them, if you're a resident, you're using a car. So this is a 400-acre operation. Our scale is certainly bigger than residential norms. I'd like to speak briefly about the economic and social benefits of circular economy projects like ours. So fertilizer enables food production, and fertilizer is in scarce supply. We know that 10 new jobs would happen, plus some spin-offs. We've also got 30 plus retailers selling to several thousand customers. And from a home basis, the home gardeners are growing food, they're producing food, and they're also producing peace of mind through the whole art of gardening. And that's really is a valuable piece of our economy. We launched this during the pandemic, and it made a difference for people to use something and get immediate gratification. When you're gardening, you're trying to grow something and you see it work, it's much easier on the brain. So we definitely want to continue supporting our home customers and move into the farm market. We think the municipality and the province would be broadening their tax base with a green technology instead of a petro technology. I mean, when you think about it, this kind of work, taking marine byproducts back into production and circular production to create more spin-off and yield, is where we're trying to go to as a society. We know we need to, as we shift down from petroleum, we need to shift up in green. And this is a very classic case of what we're trying to do here. So the product is showing higher yields. We're showing that those higher yields will create efficiency savings on the farmer time and equipment. And let me just move that. Lower input costs, create a better return on investment for farm production. And those spin-offs, so as somebody, as a farmer, for example, is covering your acreage and they're getting 50% more yield from that acreage, that's achievable given what our results are showing. Think about the greater efficiency on fuel, on equipment, on time, and all of those values can turn up ultimately in our food costs. So we've created programs for forage, root crops, and high value crops, and we very much hope we have the opportunity to roll them out. I'm going to quickly talk about the pilot system at Windy Heights, and I think Anita will also want to speak to that. But I want you to know that we checked with the legal circumstances before we got involved with the test system. The equipment was stored here at the farm. Farms are currently allowed and always do, is Windy Heights has always brought in marine byproduct. There was a batch of fish brought in by the farm, and that batch of fish was put in the compost area, and there weren't enough, there weren't enough browns for it?
Yeah, we didn't have enough. It was squishy. Whenever we tried to cover it with a brown, it would move out of the way.
So we considered putting it into the tanks, processing a batch and using it on the farm. And because we do support rule of law, very much so, in fact, this is quite legal for the farm to do, and it's not being done as a way to thumb our nose at municipal policy or anything. It was a smart way to take care of a fish product that had gone off, was smelling bad. We took it into the tanks and put it into the stabilization method. No smell outside the barn. pH control works to control smell. So it is there. Now, some of the work that we've been able to do since running that batch this summer is we've done test plots all over the farm. And that's where we got some really terrific results. We first had to find what was the actual minimum level to be effective. And we found that 1 liter an acre, 2 liter an acre, not enough. 20 liters an acre gave us their sort of really big push. And on 20 liters per acre, even with that old capelin where the nitrogen had decayed because it was old, that batch yielded 55% improvement in the forage field. It's the fish oil. So it works really well. This year, the farm is going to be spreading the fish on every acre because of the return. If we can take these fields from what is it, 7? How many acres? I mean,
it's 100. We're getting about 450 round bales right now.
So if we increase that by 55%, that's a big measurable gain for a farm. And we would very much like to do that with other farmers, but before we can sell the product to other farmers, we have to be permitted as a operating business. And that's what we're here for today. So I want to now I'm going to move into smell, and I'll talk about what we're doing during production. And then I'm going to pass the floor to Dr. Thomas, who can talk a little bit to give you some background on the science and why we can trust that this stuff would work. So first of all, as we've already discussed, the shipping and the processing and the handling of the material is enclosed inside the tank and pipe and pumping system. It doesn't have air contact. It's not going to splash on a worker's arm. It's inside sealed tanks. And so it doesn't smell. And so because of the batch that we've done, we've been able to demonstrate that this low pH stabilization works. And we've had elected officials, representative bodies, and interested community residents come by the farm and evidence that you don't smell this product. So I think we're going to rest on that claim. You don't smell the product. You can come up and not smell the product. And I think at this point, we really need to consider rumor versus fact and evidence. We know people are concerned. We understand that. The technology is precisely designed to control smell, and it works. On that matter, at this point, I'm going to ask Dr. Thomas if he can give us a little bit of clarity and guidance on some next steps and some other innovations that we might embrace here. So I will stop sharing my screen now and invite Dr. Thomas to unmute and say a few words if you could.
Okay, thanks, Diane. So I want to share that the fish biomass is known to have an aroma. This is not a secret, but the technology to reduce this aroma, there's a lot of innovations that have been used successfully. So I give you an example of one that I saw in Norway. So I was at a conference, and the team in Norway, they had these beautiful leather bags and shoes that was made 100% of fish skins. Gucci, Dolce & Gabbana were labels on these fish skin based leather bag. And one of the questions I asked the inventors is like, how do you get rid of the fish smell? And so there was like 1,000 people in the room, and he said, is the pigeon shit? That was his answer. And everybody started laughing. He's like, excuse me? And he repeated it again. And that is a technology that they've used with the urease to clean up the aroma. There's another technology that is also well known, and that is using biochar as a scavenger. And so we have taken samples, and we have used biochar in pilot experiments, and have been successful in removing the aroma from fish hydrosylates, similar to what Misalit is proposing in this operation. I've been successful as the principal investigator on a $15 million marine biomass innovation grant. And one of the objective is to work with industry partners such as Misalit to bring in these new technology to further offer improvement in their process, improvement in their product, so that they can solve challenges such as these. So Misalit is an active partner in this grant, and one of the things we're planning to do is to do a odor improvement on this product. So that technology, that science and R&D is actually integrated in this project. So as we go forward, we're expecting that this product should be further improved based on the outcome using some of the pilot results that we've gotten. So we're looking to then take this from a pilot to an inline scale test, and then from an inline scale test to a full scale operation test over the next five to 6 years, which is the duration of this project. We hope it's not going to take 5 to 6 years. It will happen earlier in the process, but we have funding for another 5 to 6 years to be able to do things like this. So I just want to share that this R&D is there to help address some of these challenges and concerns that the community have as an interest.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Now, Stephanie, if I believe the final person in our team to have a few words will be Anita, and she will need to screen share. She's got a presentation on technology on the farm.
Hi, everybody. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, we can see
Yes,
it
I
here now,
can.
Anita.
Perfect, perfect. So first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming to the presentation, and we really appreciate the time and effort that it took to get on Zoom. Not everybody's familiar with Zoom. And I'd also like to personally thank everyone that ended up coming in that are friends of ours. So let me get started with this. As you can see, the overview of this presentation is the Windy Heights Farm mission statement, the traditional farming in Newfoundland, farm innovation, challenges and opportunities, support and recommendations, and questions at the end. In the Windy Heights Farm mission statement, it strives to be a leading provider of agricultural products using innovation to create green and regenerative farming practices. Traditional farms in Newfoundland for hundreds of years have been farming by hand and using fish waste as fertilizer to enhance the soil. And you could see Food First NL on the left. They did a documentary on that. And on the right, my grandson and my husband working the land. When it comes to innovation on farms, these days you think about farms, you can think about petting zoos and farm to table restaurants, microbreweries, turning manure into electricity, selling compost, agritourism, B&Bs, working farm vacations. These are all different methods of innovation on farms. Traditional to innovation. How did we get there? Well, farmers are encouraged to be innovative, and they regularly receive and process waste materials to produce saleable products and create additional revenue streams. They receive all sorts of manure, mulch, peat, other materials that are processed and used on the farm and are sold as soil amendments or other value-added products. These are known and accepted farm revenue streams. Now, under the Newfoundland Provincial Special Waste Management Policies, farms routinely receive vast industrial volumes of fish waste for land dumping. The farms can, as you have been hearing from Diane, they can process this waste and use it for their own use on the land. This material should be the same as the above waste material and processed and allowed as an additional farm revenue stream. Innovation on today's farms are highly mechanized. They're light industrial, if not heavy industrial. People don't cut hay with a scythe anymore. They don't pick up bales of hay by hand anymore, except for us with Aaron, and thank goodness for people like them. But we have highly mechanized equipment. I saw a dairy farm today where robots are milking cows. They know exactly how much is being milked, when a cow's in heat, like everything is computerized and tracked. So farms aren't just farms anymore. They're actually industrial processes. When it comes to innovation in farms and fish hydroxylate fertilizer, as Diane was saying, it shows more nutrient and yield than traditional manure. It uses 5 gallons per acre as opposed to 10 to 20 ton per acre. It converts a traditional waste product using science and technology into a valuable agricultural commodity. When it comes to the use of crown lease. The crown lease that this facility is on states that the land hereby demised shall be used solely for the establishment and maintenance of agriculture and for the promotion and efficient agricultural husbandry and environmental control. So as you see, this is totally based on the maintenance of agriculture. So when it comes to agricultural fertilizers, what do we have to use? We know that land requires fertilizer to have things grow on it. We know that chemical fertilizer doesn't smell. That's great, but it does reduce organic matter and it causes pollution. And it's currently very expensive and very scarce in supply and getting scarcer by the day. I don't know if people are aware, but Ukraine and Russia are one of the biggest suppliers in the world of fertilizer. So Newfoundland is starting to have a hard time with that. Now, manure, when it comes to fertilizing, is organic, but it has a potential to leach. And it requires 10 to 20 tons of manure per acre to fertilize. And it can smell up to a week, as everyone's very familiar with, because fertilizing season for manure is right about now. So people will start smelling manure. That's the smell of farms, but it's very short-lived. And even if that's the only solution, it does smell, but it provides life. Now we have a solution. It's called liquid fish fertilizer. That uses only 5 gallons per acre, and it's organic and it does not leach. It smells much less than manure and it's gone within a couple of hours. We've already tested it on a farm in the Goulds and they couldn't detect the smell within 2 hours. So this stuff works and it's cheaper and it's better for the soil. Now, what challenges have we faced? Well, unfortunately, due to poor town planning and development, which occurs everywhere, it turns out that development has residential developments right butted up against agricultural land, and this causes conflicts between neighbors. And then we have unwillingness of towns and residents to accept Department of Environment determination that the project is safe and appropriate as a discretionary use for rural zoning. Now, the lack of understanding of the project and the scope and scale is causing a resistance, and it's allowing sustainable farming activities not to occur. And then a big challenge that we have is NIMBYism, not in my backyard. I understand, and we all understand, that there is valid concerns for smells. But when you're looking at the scale and what this product is, we've had numerous individuals. Now, this is the actual barn, and you'll see the 4 big tanks on the left, and then the 3 smaller tanks further down. And the picture on the right, that is the actual liquid fish in the tank. Now, we had, I don't know, 10, 15 people in the barn. They could barely smell it, and they definitely couldn't smell it outside the barn. And this is without the covers and without the filters. And it's been there since September. So this is full scale. That's all this place is ever going to do. That's the only capacity. So this is the scale we're talking about. Now, as Diane was indicating, the opportunities are vast. It's going to create jobs, skilled jobs. It's going to utilize a waste product and divert it from ocean and landfill dumping. It's going to allow local production of a vital supply that's in very scarce supply right now. It's beneficial to the environment, and it's got a smaller carbon footprint, and it's actually carbon sequestering. So it'll actually take carbon out of the air and put it into the soil for use of the plants. It increases the crop yield, and it reduces the cost of production for farmers. This is just 2 of the letters of support, one from the Newfoundland Federation of Agriculture and one from Stable Life Spirit Horse on Indian Mill Line. we have letters of support from our neighbors directly beside us. And we have lots of people that have been up and down the barn and realize that there's fish in there, but they can't smell it. So talking about support, do you believe that Newfoundland farmers should supply your food? And do you believe you should support local? And do you believe that you should support innovation? Then do you not also believe that Windy Heights Farm could be part of the solution? And our goals and recommendations is that we continue to work with the town and nearby residents to build trust and a knowledge base, and to continue to work with Grenfell to further minimize the odor and improve the product even more. And that we recommend that the town of PCSP issue a permit outright, or at the very least, a temporary permit to test out the project. This is our references. And I now thank you very much, and I open up the floor to questions. Diane?
So thank you so much. You can stop sharing your screen there, Anita.
Thank you.
And this is Stephanie here back. For those of you who joined in late, I'm with the Town of Portugal Cove-St. Phillips, and I'm going to help facilitate the question and answer period now. So thank you to Anita, Diane, and Dr. Thomas for your very informative presentations. I would now ask if anybody in the audience would like to use the raise hand function to ask a question. You can now raise your hand, and I will allow you the opportunity to be unmuted once I see those hands go up. Okay, so I'm seeing the first one here from someone whose name here is the Elliots. So the Elliots, I am going to, oh, and just a friendly reminder, actually, before I unmute you, we're going to give each person 2 minutes to ask their question, or up to 2 minutes. You can try to keep it shorter if possible. And then our project proponents, I'm going to leave you all unmuted, or you can mute and unmute at your discretion. I'll mute and unmute all the other guests here as they raise their hand. But each question and answer will be given 2 minutes respectively, and I'm going to time that here just to make sure that everybody is given a fair opportunity. So I'm going to kick it off here with the folks here named the Elliots. I've just given you the opportunity to unmute, so please go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I just want to say that I appreciate your presentation. Certainly applaud your efforts and the science behind the product that you're producing. I do have some concerns, however, and I guess some questions. Your analogy at the beginning of your presentation, talking about an old way of fertilizing fields by flicking fish on the fields versus a new way of a smooth and filtered pour. I think I have concerns if that's the way that we're looking at what's happening here on Bauline Line, because there's a big difference in doing this on a single farm versus production for what you say in your environmental assessment that went to the province. The intention would be potential production for North America. They're really two different things when we're talking thousands of tons of production versus Windy Meadows Farm using fish hydrolysate to fertilize their fields. So I just wanted to raise that because I think this not in my backyard syndrome, it's kind of offensive to some of the concerns that have been raised by the community, because it's not about Windy Meadow Farms or fish hydrolysate use on their farms. It's about having a production facility with thousands of tons being produced in your backyard, essentially. Just, I guess, to focus my question a little bit, I have some concerns as well. This fish hydrolysate was produced, to my understanding, in Twillingate under the name of Twillingate Marine Organics or Shell X. If looking back on your Facebook page, I see that it was sold under those names in May of 2020. The publicly available Twillingate Council meetings in the summer of 2019 demonstrate that there were concerns in that town, significant concerns. In fact, petition signed, 500 names in 48 hours, environmental concerns. So
Okay.
I just, for my own purposes, I guess the question that I have for you is, what is going to be different about this in our backyard to alleviate some of those concerns that I have? And again, I just wanted to focus to say that it's about the size of the production in our backyard on a piece of land that is not zoned for such production.
Okay, and
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So just to cut you off there, you're just hitting
No
the 2-minute
problem.
mark. I think we have your question, so I'll hand it over to our proponents to answer. And if you have another question after, feel free to raise your hand again. Okay, go ahead, Diane.
Thank you. So I gather the first question is what's going to be different from here in Twillingate? Well, Twillingate was a shrimp shell dryer. This is a liquid fish project. So they're distinct in terms of raw material. Twillingate ran a shell dryer, and we had many years of success until the facility was vandalized and there were some crab that built up on the wharf and could not be processed. Thereupon, we trucked it away, and the site was closed. Not from any sort of political reason, but simply because the site had been vandalized and could not be repaired. When we thought it was repaired, some material was brought in at the season and it couldn't be processed. So it was removed. So that, and so we had a long time of we had several years of successful operation at Twillingate. And I don't think we should use one final experience, which was really influenced by criminal activity, to cast a naysay on the perception of marine input by processing. So that's that. I'm actually quite proud of the work that we did in Twillingate, and I have many good experiences and people who were there and can comment positively on that work.
And explain the volume also, Diane, the difference in volume, what she was concerned about.
Well, so the volume would be liquid fish, right? So now we're going to switch over to what we're proposing to do here. And yes, the burn itself here is well able to take the volume of material. A truckload a day is not, it might seem large to a resident, but it's not large to a farm. It's perfectly in scale with the existing tax base of the infrastructure that is here at the farm. So we're basically proposing to put a facility that was designed to handle cow waste to handle fish waste. And we have demonstrated that there is no big smell that would impact the town. And I will say that there's a few points further we can go, but let's throw it back out to another question. Thank you.
So Diane, so I just wanted to stop you there. So that was about 2 minutes. Now that was kind of 2 questions in one, so no worries.
Yeah.
And to the folks there named the Elliots who asked that question, thank you. And feel free to ask another question if you want to as the process goes on. I'm going to move to the next person on my screen here. The name is Kristen. So Kristen, I've just given you the opportunity to unmute. You should now be able to do that. And you can now have your 2 minutes. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I do also want to reiterate what the Elliots commented, saying the science behind the product is, a great innovation. Hats off to coming up with a solution to handling waste material. I just have a couple questions regarding zoning and definition of agriculture. When I was reviewing the environmental assessment that was sent to government, it says that under the Newfoundland and Labrador Environmental Protection Act, this project is considered under Section 41 to be chemical manufacturing. So just questioning what Anita had said with regards to the zoning and the Crown land lease being solely for the purpose of agriculture, the establishment and maintenance of agriculture for the term of the lease. Why is that considered one and the same according to your definition, where chemical manufacturing and agriculture are not the same thing?
Right, and that's because it's still under review with the Crown lands, and what I'm saying is what we're actually doing. And I thank you for the question, Kristen. What we're actually doing is for the maintenance of agriculture. And I believe that that's part of the problem, that there is this confusion between innovation and terminology that's getting in the way of how agriculture and fish are actually interacting on a daily basis, because currently farms are already processing tons and tons and tons of fish waste. We're just turning that process into something hopefully beneficial for other farms and gardeners and So something that I believe is a agricultural process is by some people's definition not, by our definition is. And so that's a bit of the confusion.
Well, that was your
Kristen.
registration stating
Oh,
that was
sorry,
chemical
Kristen?
manufacturing.
Yeah, I'll speak to that if I may.
Okay, go ahead. And I'll just, we just finished, it took about 1 minute for the first answer. So I'll give you one more minute, Diane. And Kristen, I encourage you to ask another question at the end if you have further.
Thank
Okay,
you.
go ahead, Diane.
So when we consulted with the environmental registration about did this need to be registered or not, the reality is that we can't, when policies and procedures are enacted, they're not always, they can't always envision all of the new things that might happen. So chemical manufacturing, everything is a chemical. Water has chemicals in it. So it was explained to me that chemical manufacturing is kind of a catch-all phrase for anything where you're breaking down constituents and manipulating and changing state and you're working with their basic chemical structures. So in that regard, for example, our organic fertilizer, which is made from 100% fish, has nitrogen, it has phosphorus, it has calcium, etc. So it's got minerals and natural organic elements, and that's why it falls into that category. It's not bad. It's fine.
Okay,
I
thank you
would like
so
to
much,
ask.
Diane. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry, Dr. Thomas. Okay, yeah, and just so in the interest of time, I did allow 2 minutes for each response, but that was kind of 2 questions. So Dr. Thomas, if you want to add something, I'll give you a quick minute there as well, and then we'll move on to the next question. And in fairness to the audience, if you all, if anybody has extra questions to ask, you can certainly ask more than one. Just raise your hand again, try to ask one at a time. So Dr. Thomas, sorry, you go ahead with an answer there.
Yeah, I would like to ask Kristen a perception question. So if you have a farm that has a digester on it, so it's a dairy farm, you have a digester, you produce, for example, methane or electricity or even fertilizer, would you consider that a chemical plant? What's your perception?
Oh, I'm sorry. I think I don't think she has the opportunity to unmute. Just 1 second. I will allow you to, Kristen, I've given you the opportunity to unmute if you wish. You can speak if you wish, but that's up to you.
I'm just going to have them repeat the question because I couldn't quite understand what he said.
Yeah, I'm saying if there's many farms that has a biodigester on those farms. And those biodigesters, they use them to produce things like methane, electricity, and even fertilizer. Who do you consider that farm a chemical plant?
No, I would not, because it's not, I'm talking about chemical manufacturing. Farm products that leave the farm is in an unmanufactured state. So we're talking about a chemical manufacturing in which you take fish byproduct and you turn it into fertilizer for sale to leave the plant. A farm product that is produced at the farm leaves the farm and sold in an unmanufactured state. That is what agriculture is.
No,
The
it's not.
other being chemical manufacturing.
Okay, folks. So let's keep the questions. I'm going to move on to the next question. But Kristen, I do encourage you to return if you have another question afterwards. And we'll try to keep the questions coming in the form of our audience members to the project proponents, just to keep that opportunity clear. So the next question that I have here, the next person who's on the list is Jonathan Keynes. So Jonathan, I've given you the capability to unmute. Can you go ahead?
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, everybody, for the presentation. It was quite informative. First question that came to mind was, in addition to Kristen's, was, has the original lease for Windy Farms, has it been transferred to NL Marine Organics? We've read through some of the lease terms, and from the Crown, there would have to be a transfer, to allow this facility to operate there for another leaseholder to operate.
Right. So there is no need to NL Marine Organics is a venture partner that is leasing that building. And so Windy Heights is still owned still the owner. And so Windy Heights is our operating name. So Fusion Holdings is the leaseholder, and Fusion Holdings remains to be the leaseholder. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yeah, it does. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome, no problem.
And has the Crown, have they been consulted, and have they
Actually,
approved
yes.
for
Well,
this?
you see, yes. So the environmental review actually goes through Crown Lease, and it goes through Agri-Foods, and so everyone was aware of this and had input at the time of application. So last year, so they never came back with anything. That's why we have this environmental process, so that all the departments can be touched base on. So we didn't personally reach out until we heard that there was some kind of question with regards to that. But other than that, they'd already had an opportunity to have input on the application.
Okay, and so they're okay with the chemical manufacturing definition per EPA?
I'm not certain, honey. I'm sorry, I'm not certain.
So in the interest of time, I'm gonna move on to the next question, because that was a couple of questions in one. So thank you so much, Jonathan. And again, feel free to ask another question at the end. So I'm going to mute you again there, Jonathan. And our next question is from Dan Rubin. So Dan, I've just given you the capability to unmute. And again, you go ahead and you should be able to ask your question.
I'm very happy to be here and to be able to ask a question. I'm going to introduce myself first. Because I don't know, am I also visible on the screen? I can't tell if I am.
Yeah, you are
Yes.
visible on the screen.
Great, because I noticed that the last three questioners weren't, and I'm very happy to be visible. I live in Pooch Cove, and I'm a homeowner here. I've been here for almost 20 years. I'm a gardener, and I'm a garden educator. I was originally trained as a biologist, a marine biologist, and I've worked as a consultant for regional districts in British Columbia. So I'm very familiar with issues around land use, zoning, and those kind of questions. But I'm also a gardener, and as I've done my garden workshops for about 1,200 people so far, I've learned that there's a huge concern about food in our province, as there should be, because that stuff at the grocery store has come thousands of miles, it's laced with pesticides, and it is nowhere near as healthy as locally grown food. So the question that comes up in the work that I've been doing around food security is, how do we grow healthy food? And the answer is that we do it locally. We do it by making use of local resources. Don Bragg, a friend of mine who has one of the 3 organic farms here in the province, has to truck in sacks of chicken pellets to maintain his organic status. So not only is this project desirable, manageable, safe, and I say that advisedly because I've been following the work that these proponents have been doing for some years.
Oh, Dan,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but you're approaching your 2 minutes. If you've
I
got
am.
about 15 seconds left to ask your question.
So my question to the proponents is, how can we educate ourselves better about the fact that we need the food, and this is a highly desirable way of producing with local resources the fertilizer? How do we get beyond this tendency to pick at the details? How do we do this? Because as a society, we need to learn about the need for healthy food.
Okay, great, and thank you for your question, Dan. So I'll pass that over now to our proponents, Anita or Diane.
And then you want me to answer this one? I think this probably.
Or Dr. Thomas.
Yep. So one of the mandate of the university is to do what is called, community development and innovations, and it's taxpayers' money that runs the university, so it's to do better good for the province. I was hired as a cohort of 4 scientists, and our mandate was to improve food security in the province because of the very same issue of poor nutrient and poor food security. And one of our job is to educate the public about the benefits of these processes And I think we need to do a better job of that. So part of the reason I'm interested and is a part of this project is to do the research and development. And then we have what we call a community engagement component in this project to then share these results with the community so that they have better understanding of the benefits, the risk, and some of the issues that we resolve in using the state-of-the-art science. So I hope this answers your question.
Thank you. And there's still about a minute left if Anita or Diane want anything to add there, or if not, we can move on to our next question.
No, I think I can pop in there too, because I was just involved with the Killico Strategic Agricultural Plan that the federal government funded. And that pointed out that there is a disconnect between the policies and what's actually going on the ground. So what's happening in agriculture, and Dan was involved with that as well. And what's going on in agriculture right now is there's this willingness to develop and innovate and change so that we can have more sustainability here on the island. But the policies don't have the proper definitions. And so because there's nowhere that it actually says that farms are allowed to use fish. It's only in this special waste area. So it's difficult. Oh yes, 1 minute.
Sorry,
Okay.
Anita, you're pretty
Yes.
much, you wrap it up
It's a
there. I'll give you a
disconnect.
couple more seconds. My apologies. It's a loaded
Yes.
question.
Yes, so there's a disconnect, guys. And so we're trying to connect those dots, and we're trying to do it for the betterment of Newfoundland and the farms.
Thank you so much. And thank you to Dan for that question. That was a great question. They've all been lots of great questions so far. So I can see we've got some more people here. The next one in line to ask a question is Karen Grialis. I'm not sure. Karen, I've given you the capability to unmute. So you should be able to manually unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hey, Stephanie, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect. Guys, thanks a million for the presentation. My apologies, I'm driving at the moment, but a couple of quick follow-up questions. During the presentation, I believe Ms. Hollett brought forward that the facility was going to be outside the watershed area. I'm just wondering if it was within a watershed area, what were the implications of that? Because it appears that NIMBYism has already managed to take place, given that comment. Couple of other things too, if this is a kind of a tried and tested process, why is it we have to go on to a kind of a testing process again to see how well it's going to work through various pieces of funding that the doctor mentioned? And the last piece is that with regards to that plant in Twillingate, which I wasn't aware of, and obviously it was vandalism, which is unfortunate, that caused it ultimately to shut down, but was it a funding issue, or if we have the same situation here, are we going to be left with some product out on the side of the road that we're going to have to deal with then down along the line as well? So, and I leave that with you.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen. I'll pass it over to our proponents. Go ahead, Diane.
Okay, so the first question about what would we do if it was inside a watershed, I'm not going to answer because it's not in a watershed. We understand and respect the issues around watersheds. We fortunately are outside, so we don't have to deal with that one. We could, if permitted, produce this month, start producing, once the electricity is installed and the rest of our equipment is installed, we could produce fertilizer that would be perfectly suitable for field and vegetable outdoor application. But in order to get into the Canadian greenhouse market, we want to continue to innovate, because there's going to be some smell issues and people would like to work in greenhouses without the odor. So so there's always a product continuum. And, but as it stands right now, the basic product that we have works terrifically well to improve yield and gain. So if we did nothing else, that's a viable product. But because the world is changing and the challenges of growing food are changing, we need to respond likewise and continue to innovate. in terms of your question about was there a pile of money involved in this? No, there is not a pile of money involved in it, but what we do have is the existing assets of the farm, which can be put to work in a more productive manner. And the farm here is owner operated. So whereas in Twillingate, we were gone off into the to a more remote location, this location here is close to all our homes. We live here, we work here. Owner operated situations rarely get vandalized the same way as would a remote facility.
Thank you. Perfect, Diane. So Kieran, I'm going to mute you again there. The next question, the next person here on my screen is just named LS. So LS, I have given you the opportunity to unmute. So you can go ahead. Okay, I can see you're unmuted. So go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, hi, this is Loyal. I'd like to circle back to the quantity issue or the volume. On one of the slides, I thought I seen there was like 4,071 cubic feet currently available. Is that correct?
That would be the total storage capacity in the barn. That's the total tankage cubic.
Okay, so for those seven tanks, that's about a little over 115,000 liters of capacity that you have there.
And we have twice that in a containment capacity.
Okay. So I believe the Elliots asked about the size of the trucks coming in, and you mentioned, oh, it's trucks. So in order to supply the 115,000 liters to fill that up, what are the size of these trucks? Because trucks can go everything from a little tiny pickup truck to those big tankers that haul fuel to the gas stations, which are about 11,000 liters each.
So if you're finished, so the standard trucking size would be like a 53-foot tractor trailer with totes loaded on it, and our one truckload is very important in terms of running this process, that when we receive raw material, we take it and stabilize it. And we have a process flow designed for that, so that we have enough capacity to offload a full truck and not leave material hanging around. It's called first in, first out in terms of processing. So it is very important that we have enough tankage. Now, I realize that might seem like a lot to somebody who's not working in agriculture. And but a common farm would use a truckload or two truckloads in a season. We have farms in Newfoundland that would use multiple truckloads in a season. And if they're not using our product, they're using something else.
So how big are these trucks? You said 53 foot with container. So are we talking pounds? Are we talking liters? How much are we talking?
About 24 IBS totes.
So 24,000 liters
a day.
Yeah, well, when we have a truck arrive, we have based our projections on one truck a week to start, because there's not that much raw material out there, right? I mean, now here's a good point that I want to refer to. When we talk numbers, people who aren't used to dealing with our type of business can make mistakes. When we filed our application with the ER, somebody mistook the math, and he thought that we had not just a yearly, like when we're sort of 3 or 4 years out, 5,000 ton a year. He took that as a daily figure. He thought we were going to intake 5,000 tons a day. Now, there's not that much raw material out there. For anyone who knows the sector, it's a nonsensical thing. But for people who don't know, they were afraid. And they had envisioned something the size of the Come By Chance refinery. That's not what this is.
I'm sorry to cut you off. It's a great answer.
I just wanted to make my point.
Yeah, if you have about 5 seconds, if you want to make one final sentence there, and if not, we'll move on to the next question.
The scale is right-sized for this facility. This facility will never become a monster production facility. This will be one of several facilities in the province. And this place can run a good operation. We're very optimistic about this.
Okay, thank you so much, Diane, and thank you, Loyal. I muted you again there so I can move on to the next question, but feel free to ask another question at the end if need be. Our next question in order is Alice Mannion. So Alice, I've given you the opportunity to unmute yourself. Let's see if you can do that. Okay, go ahead with your question. I'm going to start my timer.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I guess I'd like to call a spade and say that, this is a fish processing plant. And there's no doubt from everything that I've read and everything that you've been presenting that the product of this fish processing plant is good for agriculture. And I don't think we can dispute that. And I certainly don't want to dispute that. And I think it's great that this product is out there. But my concern is how can you validate that this is actually within the intended meaning under the zoning in the municipality? And I guess my second question, which is kind of related, is while you don't have to deal with the watershed area, and I'm assuming that you mean Windsor Lake and that area, this is in a neighborhood where there are, we're not on town supply, we have our own wells, and maybe you could address that as well.
Certainly. So the product is considered non-toxic and registered by the federal government as safe for use on farms and soil. It actually improves the quality of soil to absorb water and break down micronutrients. So there has been no evidence that this product would hurt wells. And in fact, it was evaluated by Department of Environment and found not to be a hazard for wells. So I don't know what more I can say other than say it's not a hazard for wells. The watershed issue was something that was raised by the town of Torbay. And when they expanded their watershed area, they included some of the existing farmlands at Windy Heights. And Windy Heights is in fact under obligation not to use manure on those fields, but can use non-toxic alternatives such as liquid fish. So that was part of the motivation for trying that product here. They have a very real need for it, as do many other farms around the province.
Great, thank you so much.
I don't actually, I'm not sure that Diane answered my question with respect to the validity that this is actually within the intended meaning of the zoning. With respect to the fish processing plant.
Okay, so Diane,
Maybe
I'll give you just one more minute to answer that question. So you can go ahead.
Okay, so agriculture evolves. Like we're not stuck in the horse and buggy era. So there are several pieces of legislation in the province which allow for technical innovation in agriculture. And that's what this is. So we're not processing. This is not a fish processing plant. This is a fish fertilizer plant. We don't use the food grade fish. That would be a food thing. We're talking about the portion of inedible byproduct, which is deemed by CFIA as fertilizer grade. So it really is an organic fertilizer plant, much as you would have a manure compost facility. Same kind of category of waste. So the category is agriculture. The technology was developed for agriculture purposes to meet the specs, and the intended use is agriculture.
Okay,
so
perfect.
That doesn't make it agricultural, you know.
I'm gonna wrap that question up there. So Alice, I've just had to mute you because we've got to move on to the next one. I'm trying to stick to my time. So I'll hand that one over now to our proponents. Go ahead and provide your answer.
Oh, okay. So some of the things that we would do would be to work with community groups, maybe soccer association, and see if we can't transfer some of the success we had in hay fields onto sports fields and turf development. We'll be doing some work with community gardens, and we'll be doing some work with, obviously, with the university-based groups. And we've been sponsored to do a forage project where we're working with forage growers around the province, collecting soil samples and helping with management practices to actually improve the yield on our forage. And it's important because forage determines the price of our milk. And our fertilizer prices have pretty much doubled. So our milk prices are going to take another big jump up in the next few years. There's no factor that is showing us reason to think that they're going to go anywhere but up. However, if we're able to provide an affordable bulk source of fish fertilizer and we can improve yields by 50% plus, we have a tool in our hands to combat inflation and combat rising food prices. And that principle alone is enough reason for us to all take a look at how we can come together and make this work.
And
And
let
if
me,
I may add one point.
You've just got 30 seconds there left in your time to answer the question, proponent.
go ahead, Dr. Thomas.
Yeah, so the other thing that I want to point out is that Newfoundland has a nutrient insufficiency issue. And as you know, we have the worst health issues of all the provinces in Newfoundland, in the country. So one of the things that a product like this can do is improve the nutritional composition of the forage. And when the animals eat it, their nutrition is also better. So when you eat it, you have better nutrition. So in terms of improving personal and community health, that's something that we can show in short term.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Thomas. So thank you for that question. I can see I've got some repeat people here looking to ask questions, but I'm going to try to go through each of the new ones. I have one here, Gorman K. So where did it go? Gorman K, I'm going to give you the capability to unmute. You should be able to do that now if you'd like to ask your question.
Yeah, sure. So I want to start off with, I do agree that this is a fantastic proposal and that it's something that is really good, you know, for the environment and for the economy and everything. However, I do firmly believe that it is good, but I need to circle back to the traffic. So 53-foot trailers are big enough. And then with that large of a load, have you driven up Bauline Line Extension recently? I mean, it's bad enough for cars, and I'm a mother. My children play with children that live right on that track where those big trucks are going. That's my concern. That road is terrible, and now you want to put transport trucks on it? Is that hard enough for a child to ride their bike up there as it is?
Can I answer that? Are you done, ma'am?
Can I? You go.
Sure.
Mark?
Go ahead, Jer. Go ahead, Jer.
You've got 2 minutes.
So there's 7 quarries on Bauline Line Extension. Those trucks don't go through the community very often because it's not worth going that way. We go the other way to the Torbay bypass, right? It's the amount of trucks we're talking about is less than what we're talking about that I take in manure a year, right? Do you guys see the trucks trucking manure, right?
And the bales of hay. So there is a dairy farmer that transports hay from our farm, and that's more trucks than what our fish processing would take. And there is dairy farmers that's around the corner that have big tankers on a daily basis. That's more than what we would take. Yep. So yes, we understand there are trucks, and ma'am, I have actually complained about the driving on this road because my grandchildren are on this road as well in school buses. And so I am very adamant that people drive. That's why we make sure we have professional drivers that drive safely, that abide by the law, and they'll take the highway roads and they'll take the wider roads that rather than go through a narrower congested intersection. We've looked at all this, and ma'am, I am 110% behind you. These vehicles have to travel safely on the roads, and we intend to.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much. So that's your time for that answer. I'm going to move on to the next question here. Ray Dyer, I'm giving you the opportunity to unmute. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Hello.
Hi, Ray. You're on the air.
How you doing? I'm actually, you know, it's a little different here. Some people have asked some success stories and stuff that that they've had with this fish product here. I'm actually, you know, I'm a little bit of a different gardener. I'm actually a cannabis gardener. I'm a chronic pain patient, medical cannabis gardener. My wife is a recovering cancer patient. She actually found out she was pregnant and had cancer on the same day. This fish emulsion product has pushed our cannabis over the limit. It's absolutely the best product you will ever find available on the market. It is 100% organic. It's the safest thing that we've added to our product. It's made it an absolute difference and a ridiculous difference. The idea of stifling this progress for anything like a truck on a road or a little bit of a smell or something like that is absolutely insane. And it kind of shows how behind the times Newfoundland actually is. This is something that needs to happen yesterday. This could actually literally save the future of our province if things go awry with our food sources. It's simple as that. If you don't let this go ahead, simply pitiful. And my question is, how could anyone let that happen?
Thank you so much for your question, Ray. I'm going to mute you again there. And our project proponents, you now have some time if you'd like to speak to that question.
Thank you very much, Ray. I really appreciate you calling in. Because of the nature of this format, you know, we're going to see more people who are really motivated and who are afraid and concerned about the project are more likely to call in than the many, many supporters that we do have. And I think it's important that we hear all the voices, we take people seriously in both perspectives. And we do take all of these concerns seriously. We are aware of smell and we are mothers and are not interested in seeing horrendous traffic on the roads either. But we do know that the good our project can create is worth it. It is 100% worth it. We have a food crisis right now. Our food prices have gone crazy and they're only going to get worse. And we have a solution. We could do something about it. So do we sit on our hands and say, well, you know, it's new, it's different, we're not used to this, we'll just put it aside for another year or so? I think that's really not dealing with the issue. I think we need to innovate and solve our own problems and see where the world takes us.
Okay,
and I want
thank you so much. Oh, sorry, Anita, do you have something?
That's okay. I wanted to thank Ray. Ray has been a customer of Diane's for years, and he has transferred over from the Twillingate era. And so there's many individuals that have benefited from that. Now, Ray, I wonder, what was the smell like for you to use inside? You're using it, right? So tell us, what do you think?
Ray is muted. Your time for this question is up on both fronts, so I am going to have to move on.
No worries. Thanks, Ray.
I just want to put a quick note out here. In the interest of time, it's 8:28. We did say we were going to try to stick to our time. I am going to go through another few questions here, but I will ask folks in the audience, please try to ask your question promptly. As I said, this meeting is just an opportunity to learn about the project. We're not making a decision tonight or anything. So please try to keep it to questions rather than your personal opinion on the project. And I'll open the floor for the next question. I see one here from D. Curtis. So D. Curtis, you are on the air. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. Very informative, certainly answered some of my questions. One concern I did have, now this whole area, I'm in the Chesley Van Heights subdivision. So of course, we're all on water wells up here. So I'm a little bit concerned about the water usage. How much will your project consume in water per day?
We actually don't add water to the fish. It comes in and it gets processed. So we're not a heavy water user. Our water use would be focused on cleanup, and we have our own well for that.
So how many liters would you use per day approximately?
On a processing, see, it's difficult to give you an yeah, because we use the same water over and again for cleanup, and it's but you could say 1,000 liters once every week, 2 weeks.
Okay.
So and just a follow-up question, the same topic. So you guys haven't done any hydrogeological studies on the usage of water, or what effects would be the aquifer to use that much water, or
Yeah,
or have you applied for
Yes,
a water
actually,
usage license?
yes, I think the individual that had the farm beforehand had those tests done. And Jerry, do you remember how much our well could sustain?
It was 5,000 liters an hour.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Okay, guys. So I'm so sorry to cut you off there, but the that's the end of that question's time. So that was D. Curtis. Thank you so much for that question, and thank you for the answers. I'm going to move on to the next person here, and that is Madonna. I think you're next on my list. So I have now given you the opportunity to unmute, Madonna.
Stephanie, I don't want to participate in this. I just want to tell a participant, Chris, you have to use your Zoom hand, not your physical hand, if you want to get answered.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Chris. I will see if I can find you right now. Chris, okay, I'm gonna give you the opportunity to unmute. I hope it's the right Chris. I'm saying ask to unmute here on a Chris. Okay.
Thank you. And
My
thanks so much.
apologies, Chris, for the confusion there, and thank you, Madonna, for that help.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I don't think anybody, anyway, great presentation. I don't think anybody disputes the fact that the product has many, many pluses. Our only concern is, the effect or any impact it would have on our neighborhood. What type of waste is produced, and the watershed, again, everybody in this whole area, uses wells. So we don't have the luxury of tapping into, the water way back. What waste is produced? How is it handled? And is there any, is there any possibility that there could be issues with rodents, flies, or anything like that? So how do you, what waste, what volume, and how is it handled?
So
I want to answer that. I really want, we have some piggies here that really like to utilize the leftover bones. There's no flies produced because the process is, number one, it's covered. And number two, it's in a state that it doesn't attract them because it's not raw fish. But so there is absolutely no waste that we have to concern ourselves with. It's all utilized. But go ahead, Diane. I just had to say our piggies ate it all.
So I appreciate the concern about wells and watershed. And the environment took a good hard look at that, as did the Community Advisory Committee on the Environment. And all hands concluded that the work that we're doing here would not impact negatively wells or watershed. It's a safe process. We've got all of the risk mitigation and the containment systems in place. And it's really has a very small footprint.
Great, thank you so
And
much.
if I could add,
Yeah.
one of the objectives of the FBI project is zero waste. So we want to, we are striving towards 100% utilization of marine biomass because it's such a scarce resource. And so that's one of our outputs from this project.
Thank you so much for answering the question. Our next hand up in the audience is Daryl. I'm going to give you the opportunity to unmute. You should be able to do that now, and you've got 2 minutes.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. Very informative, I have to say. I do agree with a lot of the concerns for sure. I'm not sure how people outside of the Bauline Line Extension area or Portugal Cove-St. Phillips would have any concern about what plant is coming here. So I'm not sure why they would come into this meeting. But my question would be to Windy Heights, what kind of fertilizer have you used in the last few years? Did I hear correctly that you've been using some of the fish stuff on your field over the last 2 years?
Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, so when we took over the place, we were slapped with a notification that we were in the Torbay watershed area. So we moved to organics, and we were allowed to still produce on our sod fields. That's when we started working with Diane, and yeah, it's with using the products, we don't have any snow mold anymore, which means I don't have to spray for molds. We don't have any insect problems because the grass is actually healthier. So I don't have to spray for pests. The way the product works, we can actually change the soil profile. So then weeds are no longer in a dominant state, right? So we don't have to use herbicides anymore. It's changed the way we do things here immensely, right?
So you use the fertilizer that we're talking about on your field
Yes.
over the last 2 years?
Yep.
I mentioned that because I live quite close, and the smell that we've had in the last 2 springs have been the most accurate and lasting smells that have lasted a good week. No doubt, there's no doubt. I've been around manure farms as well. That seems natural to me. But what I've smelt over the last 2 years here have been significantly something I couldn't even figure out what it was. But it was definitely, we basically were stuck in our houses. So I'm just wondering if you could just go over how the smell is not spreading out everywhere.
Yeah, so I believe that's hen manure, right? That's being spread, and yeah, that's a different place, right? Not us.
It's only over the last 2 years I've smelled it. So if you're correct, well, that's good. But it's only since I've been here 9 years now. So it's the last 2 years I've smelled it.
Yep.
It's new fields that were just developed.
Yeah, and in the interest of time, we are going to have to wrap up that question. But thank you so much, Daryl. I'm going to lower your hand there. So I can see, folks, there is quite a lot of questions here remaining. In the interest of time, I'm going to take, I think there's 7 questions left. So I'm going to give those people a chance to answer the questions. For anybody who is here on the meeting now, you can certainly sign off. There will be a recording of this session, so don't feel the pressure if you've got other commitments. I did really want to try to keep us to 8:30. But we'll answer these next few. So we'll try to ask people to, ask your question quickly. Try not to express your opinion on the project too much. And the other side of that, there is, if you have to leave and you did not get a chance to ask your question, you can certainly email it in to myself. My email is just stephanie.tucker@pcsp.ca. You can find that on the website on the article about this as well. And I'll make sure the project proponents get your question and can answer it. So there's a few questions left here. I am going to try to work through those, but for those who are unable to stay, please feel free to take the opportunity to leave. The questions will all have a chance to be answered, and the recording will be available as well. So you don't want to hear too much more from me. I'm going to move now. I'm just going to start from the top of my list and work through these last 7. Jonathan Keynes, you have the floor.
Hi, thank you. There were some comments on NIMBYism, and I'm an area resident. I'm not horribly opposed to the process or anything like that. And if it does remain sealed, fairly confident we're not going to have any issues. I wanted to explain sort of like the nature of my concern, and I think a lot of the area residents is in terms of like trust. It's proposed as an agricultural operation to the town of PCSP. But then the environmental registration doc says it's classified as chemical manufacturing. Read the environmental registration doc through, claims is agricultural, then provides a topo map showing that the vast majority of the area is zoned rural and requires a zoning change. Like, what can you do or say to give some confidence that this is going to be what you propose it is, and that the town could make a sound decision in reviewing this?
I'll jump in there. So I do think we have proceeded with transparency so people can trust. We have put together a pilot and we have invited people in to actually have a look at that. The material, although it is late, it triggered an environmental review because we are taking an organic material and transforming it. And the province calls that chemical manufacturing. It's 100% fish, which is an organic substance. That's what it is. So we've got that, right? We've got that. This is the process. We've adhered to the public policy, and we've followed, we're playing by all the rules in terms of registering, providing full disclosure. We have waste management plans, air filtration audits, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a whole layer of public process that's going to, it's not simply, as Ronald Reagan said, it's not just trust, you also verify. So the province has in place a verification system that we comply, or will be hopefully complying with, as we, if we're permitted to operate. So once the policymakers want, then, so we live up to a code and they administer the code. So it's that kind of a regulatory environment. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat.
Do you want to ask a second follow-up?
We've only got about 30 seconds left for your answer. So go ahead, Jonathan, if you have a quick follow-up.
Okay, I guess, you know, what raised a lot of red flags for me, you know, I'm familiar with environmental impact assessments, you know, quite, you know, thoroughly. And like reviewing the environmental registration document, there's a lot of stuff in there that just didn't add up. I mean, you know, a section devoted to air and odor dispersion, but then no dispersion modeling was a windrows. You know, like there's a lot of things in it, not to be critical, but it was stuff that kind of raised flags as to how thorough was this done.
Thorough enough for our registration document was evaluated by 23 government departments and experts at that level. So they are the experts, whether you or I or whomever is familiar with something, they're the people who regulate, they're the experts. And when they asked us follow-up questions, we had to answer them, and we did. So we have met and satisfied that scrutiny.
But I'm so sorry. I have to cut you off, Diane. I'm really trying to move it along here. So thank you, Jonathan. I'm
Thank you.
So sorry, Jonathan, I muted him as he was saying thank you. So Jonathan, I'm lowering your hand. The next one here, let's try to keep these questions as quick as we can, is Kristen. So go ahead, Kristen, I just gave you the capability.
Hi, thanks. So I just wanted to bring up a couple comments. So I respect that everyone agrees that this is a good product, but I want to circle back to the fact of how the definitions of what is agriculture and what is allowed to occur on rural zoned land is very important. For instance, I wanted to build a garage, but I was only allowed to build it so big according to the bylaws of Portugal Cove-St. Phillips. And there's a due process that has to occur when this happens. And what I look at that occurs on a rural zoned land can be agriculture, but you cannot have chemical manufacturing or a manufacturing process, because say what you want, this is a processed product, just like you said, it is processed. And the definition of agriculture is an unmanufactured thing. So what you have to consider is that these rules and definitions are put in place by the Town of Portugal Cove so that they can make the best decisions in accordance to the bylaws. And I think that is very important, that I want to circle back to how these terms and definitions are relevant and that they're very important, and you can't just interpret them slashly to be a variety of different things. They mean one thing. They don't mean that it's a bunch of different things. It's like red is red. You know, it's something that's very important. I think that when it comes down to whether or not there should be an amendment for this to occur, then the town needs to take those things into consideration and these important definitions and terms.
Great. Thank you, Kristen, for your question. Do you have a question there? Sorry, you've got about 10 seconds left if you want to ask a specific question.
So there's been a very lack of transparency because you haven't really answered on whether this falls in the town's definition of agriculture. And I do have it here if you need it.
So I'm going to answer that question, and I think Anita may want also to answer that question. There are, first of all, I challenge you on the unmanufactured thing because I don't know where that comes from. Farms, for example, make
Canned
milk,
tomatoes.
Canned tomatoes. Farms process food and other things. So there is a processing nature to farms. It's very much entrenched in farming. Whether or not the Portugal Cove Town Act has a definition of, well, the Town Act is something that the town is going to deal with. There are other definitions of agriculture in the province, which actually include the opportunity for technical innovation. And we think we would fall there. The thing is, if we can't evolve, how do we evolve as a society? Our policy has to reflect our common practice and values. And we think we've been 100% transparent in what our process is, the way that we've designed it to not impact on residents. I get it that you're fearful, but we have not, to this date, you've not smelt any side effect or anything from this batch that's there. So I think we are actually being quite transparent in terms of if the town chooses to, the town has discretion to act in several ways, and it's not up to me to answer that. That's really something that will go back to the town. I think what I can do as a proponent and our team can do is to demonstrate our adherence to community values, and innovation and farm life are one of those community values.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, so our next question here is from Vicky. You have the opportunity, and I am sorry, I just want to pause for 1 second. Vicky, you can unmute yourself, but I did take a screenshot here of those original ones I said we were going to answer before we wrapped up the meeting. So we're working through those. I'm so sorry for those who've continued to raise your hands. You're going to have to email in your questions, but I'll make sure that I answer everybody's question who had their hand up before kind of our cutoff. I really would like us to try to wrap up by 9. I'm sorry, I know everybody probably wants to get off and go to bed and watch your show. So, okay, so the next one there was Vicky. So go ahead, please.
Thank you for taking my question. Thanks so much for your presentation. I don't think, as many have also said, that no one is disputing the benefits of the product. My family, actually, my mom uses the product and loves the product. They actually sell the product at their retail operation. And I have tons of experience in the food industry, you know, from wholesale, retail to vendor side of the business. And talking about food sourcing, it's wonderful. I mean, it's a great thing for food security. I don't know that it'll affect the pricing. We'll see, I guess, how time will tell with that. We don't see many prices of food going down, although the cost of that might be cheaper. But it will be great to see it. From the pilot, I know that you had mentioned about the smell and it was, I think the timing was fall, like September to up to now. I think it would, I think people would feel better, you know, if we're talking about July month, you know, if we don't smell any smell in July month, because I live on the Bauline Line Extension. I think people will probably feel a little bit better. And I think also, I know it was a different manufacturing facility in Twillingate. I have family and friends in that area and received a lot of feedback, some good and some not so good, about even how, you know, the facility was left in the end, which I think, in all honesty, in fairness or unfairness, I don't know, it just adds to people being scared of the situation.
Vicky, I'm so sorry to cut you off. I'm just wondering if you can please get to your question, as your time is running short. So you've got a few more moments if you want to ask a specific question.
Yeah, so I guess I'm just wondering if we'll have the opportunity, I guess we will, more than likely, in this, to see if we have the smell in the summertime. And also if they can address some of, you know, like we saw images of flies and stuff on people's homes and talks of big smell. I know that was done differently, so I just want some information and perspective to that. And then I guess just a final point, just to say that, you know, I understand a lot of these people on the call are not in the community, and I can certainly appreciate food security, working in the industry. But when you're talking about people's homes and people's property and the value of their homes, you know, that's scary stuff, right? You know, and you are putting a lot of trust into people. So just want to get into that.
Vicky, I'm
Thanks.
so sorry. I hate having to cut everybody off, but I have to turn it over to the proponents in the fairness. of
Yeah,
time.
no, I'm
Please-
done. Thank you. I'm
Thank
done.
you. Please go ahead, Diane and Anita.
So I'll jump in first on the fish smell, and Anita, I think, will have other words to say about other smells. So thank you for the kind comments about the benefit of the product. The technology was designed to minimize smell. It's a clean tech process, which is enclosed and produces a product that does not touch oxygen. So it's very easy to see how an enclosed system wouldn't generate smell. The Twillingate experience was with a different experience. I will say, first, when we went to Twillingate, the community had, they were ocean dumping their shrimp shell, and as a result, the community harbor and boat basin area was always littered and stank. And that's a situation we went into. It was an existing bad smell. So we operated for just one season, and we processed every bit of shrimp shell that plant produced, and we cleaned it up. And there were no complaints. Not only were there not complaints, people were delighted that their harbor was clean. There wasn't rotten shell all around the shores. So but we do understand the nature of fish can be difficult. A crab shell could go bad. When it built up on the wharf and the location couldn't process it, there were flies. So we trucked it away. So we did the responsible thing. Now, we realize that some people may never be happy, you can't do enough, but we did what we could, and we thought we did a reasonable job. And I'm still proud.
Can I cut in now with regards to the valuation? Right on. So the valuation of homes, I perfectly understand where you're coming from, Vicky. And I think it's a really valid point. What I need you to understand is that we will continue to make sure that we do everything in our power to minimize and mitigate and continue to minimize and mitigate. So there's continuing research and development being done so that even when we do spread it, if we get to a point where it won't be detectable, we'll be just as happy as you. But what we're saying right now, this product smells less than manure. It smells less than chicken manure, right? And it will not devalue.
I'm so sorry, Anita. We got to stick within the time. So our next question is from Judy. We're going to hopefully get out of here by 9, everybody. Judy, please go ahead. You can ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you for allowing me to ask a question here. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a big supporter of organic agriculture and food security in our province. I have been for 20 odd years. My concern with this is the town zoning and permitting a chemical processing plant, which actually does use much more than just fish, because there's chemicals listed on page 21 of the registration there. My concern is it would set precedent for future processing facilities. Maybe not, even if yours may not be so bad, what would prevent a more dangerous processing facility from setting up shop in the area? Wouldn't it be better suited in an area outside of municipal boundaries, maybe even closer to your source material?
Are you finished? Will I jump in now?
I'm finished.
Okay.
Thank you for your question, Judy. Please go ahead, proponent.
Thanks. So the additives, the chemical additives that would be added would be under the organic standard. We use the minimum additive as a processing aid that's required to stabilize the fish. So that makes a big difference. So this is not like dousing a tank of fish with phosphoric acid to boost up the phosphoric level. It's about using the minimum that's required to keep that pH low, and that's considered a best practice under agriculture, under organic agriculture. So I feel good about that. In terms of precedent, Council has the discretion to evaluate each application on its own merit. So there is no, so council won't be bullied or won't be forced or won't like open the door to the floodgates of bioprocessing operations popping up in every corner. They have the discretion to evaluate each one. I think that was it. And the other thing is, in terms of community impact, this operation has carried on now. We've had the tanks full for months and nobody has noticed a fish smell and nobody has complained. So I don't believe, I mean, I understand there's fear, understand there's concern. I get it. I have a high value house. I wouldn't want to lose any money either. But we have designed this process so that it is, does have non-impact. And it has been evaluated by the provincial and federal governments through the ER process as having no impact. So we just kind of got to go with the experts in this case. The town will deal with the zoning.
You've got 20 seconds, Diane. 20 seconds.
Sure. The town has discretion in many ways to allow this or not. And but the impact of moving this outside means it probably won't happen because the costs of starting on a greenfield project and starting from scratch isn't how new ideas and new projects happen. They need to happen in a cluster. You need to have—
Diane, I'm so sorry to cut you off. I've gotten everybody off here tonight. We're keeping the time strict. We got 5 minutes left and 3 questions. Let's get through them. The next one up is Mike. Mike, you are now able to unmute. You have the floor.
Thank you. So I appreciate the honesty and the reference to the horrible smell. I think that's likely the crux of the issue, certainly for many of the people that I've spoken with. And I recognize the value in the product, like I think many of the other people on the call do as well. I fully understand the science of soil health, increased yields, and the impact this has on food security. So we bought a house near an operating farm with our eyes wide open and can appreciate and value the fact that Windy Heights composts its own organic waste. I think there's a difference in Windy Heights composting its own waste versus trucking in organic waste from all over the Northeast Avalon or the whole island and becoming a waste management facility, which essentially is what this is. It's not necessarily NIMBY. I'm not sure it's appropriate, I guess, adjacent to anybody's backyard. So I guess kind of where I'm going with this question is, if this goes ahead and it proves wildly successful, what would the plan be for scaling up to full production? Whether it's, is it multiple locations? Is it scaling up this location or like one larger facility elsewhere? I guess so. Just kind of wondering if this really goes wildly well, what's the plan for scaling up?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that question, Mike, and go ahead.
So the, who knows what the future will bring. However, I think this facility is an ideal place for us to get started. It's close to St. John's, we're close to service centers, universities, et cetera, et cetera. Once up and running and established, we'll see how far the demand goes. In other countries like Scotland and Norway, where they have facilities like this, they can be much larger. And I think if ours were to get larger than that 5,000 units I referred to, I think we would probably be looking at another facility. We want very much to be able to do this project here to get it up and running. We are open to establishing another facility down the road, which would integrate this work and other work in other resource developments. But I think we have a commitment to the farm and we want to support the farm's transition into profitable regenerative agriculture. So I think there is something about right sizing it here. And
about 30 seconds there to wrap it up.
Yeah, so what we're really looking for is an opportunity to get this project up and running in a convenient location, which may then, should it grow and be wildly successful, we'd probably get another spot and still maintain our tie with the farm.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Diane. So we've got one final question. It's 8:58. We're doing good at our 9 o'clock goal. So Ray Dyer, you now have the opportunity to ask the final question, and then I will wrap it up before we conclude.
Okay, Yeah, so sorry I'm back here again. Basically, a lot of questions are coming up about the smell. Like I said, I've been using this product for years myself. Basically, the bottom line is that, you know, when you open it, it smells like fish. You know, you apply it to the soil, it's gone. It's instantaneously, 15, 20 minutes later, in an enclosed area now, inside a home, inside an actual physical home. And I'm a homeowner as well. I don't, and I mean, not that it matters, but I live in a new construction, a new home. I take very proud of my home. Actually, I consider it my dream home. I respect it. It's my wife's dream home. We love it more than anything. I'm the type of kid that would leave my parents' house when they cook fish growing up. Not joking. This product works that good that the smell doesn't bother me. The fact that it smells initially, sure, whatever, it smells like fish. You apply it, it's gone. It's not like manure. Manure lingers for days, weeks. This is an actual miracle product. It's a completely organic, like you say, there's minimal chemicals added to it that have to be added to it for organic standards. So it meets the organic standards. Therefore, it's not a chemical processing. It's organic. It only has the chemicals that needs to be there to meet the standards. And you know, that's it. And the bottom line is that I use this all the time. I use this in my home. It doesn't smell. It's simple as that. It's gone as soon as you put it there. This point is
Ray, I'm so sorry to cut you off, but you've got about 30 seconds if you have a question to ask there.
And the question is, and I was about to go into it, the question is, so are we going to pave the way to the future with a sustainable organic solution to a problem that's worldwide, let alone province-wide, and reduce our carbon footprint in the process instead of trucking in chemicals from other countries like Russia and whatnot that we might not even be able to get anymore in the future? Or we're going to pave the way to the future by doing this, or stay stuck in the past by doing that? So that's my question.
Okay, go ahead, proponents. You can now answer the question.
I very much hope we can walk towards the future. I really hope that we can come together, and Anita and I and the rest of the team would stay involved with the community. We're not going to be, you know, we're not nameless, faceless, sort of soulless corporations. We're mothers, we're parents, we're community members.
Yeah.
And we have an interest in doing this safely, doing this well. But we can't turn our backs on new technology and new opportunities because we're afraid.
We love this community. We love this farm. We will do whatever we can to enhance this farm while enhancing the community. We will continue to do what we can to be good corporate citizens, to be stewards of the land, and you will with time learn to trust that we have your best, the community's best interests at heart.
May I add one more thing? Quite simply,
you've got 30 seconds and then we're going to wrap it up. So go ahead, Diane. Last comment.
We believe we're onto a good thing. I will say that the Minister of Environment would not have approved this. They would not have gone out on a limb with their 23 experts to approve something that could be a catastrophic nightmare for surrounding residents. They just wouldn't. I'm not that special. They would truly, this project has gone through a full range of scrutiny. And I think people understand that when you roll down your window as you drive by, you don't smell anything. When you roll down your window.
Thank you very much, everybody, for all your honest opinions.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. So in the interest of time, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm so sorry. My apologies to the last couple of folks with your hands up. I did try to go back through the list as quick as I could, but there's always an opportunity. I'm available by email at any time. You can reach out with your questions and I'll ensure that either the project proponents or town staff get those questions. I just want to send a big thank you to everybody who came out. And the number one thing I want to thank everyone for is you really stuck to the respectful dialogue and keeping this conversation positive and moving forward. So thank you so much for the opportunity to listen and learn from one another. Please stay tuned. I'm sure, you know, as this process moves along, if council does consider the project and does consider to move forward with the amendment process, of course, there'll be further opportunity for engagement. And if council denies the project, then that will also be announced. So keep an eye on our website for further details or tune into the council meetings. And that's all for tonight. Thank you all so much for being here. And thank you to the project proponents, Anita, Diane, and their special guest, Dr. Thomas. So have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
My apologies, we went a half hour over. I'll try to keep it a little shorter next time.
Thank
All
you
right,
very much,
everybody.
Stephanie. You did a wonderful job.
Thank you so much. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Right.